Hello, my name is Jeff Walker, and I am the Executive Director of the Beacon Community Resource Center, located in South Bend, Indiana. We are a shared space community center, which means that we provide a place for organizations to hold their ongoing programming for various sports activities, youth mentoring, and adult educational programs. My church, Riverside, is also a partner in the Beacon Community Center. As a church, we entered this reentry space just over a year ago. For the past 5 years, we have hosted annual Locked in Solidarity events. During the first 4 years, we followed the annual theme of the National CCDA Locked in Solidarity Initiative. This last year, however, driven by things happening here in our local community, we took a pivot from the CCDA's theme for 2020. Our focus locally was restoring the humanity of returning citizens. We were not trying to be pioneers or trendsetters in our change of direction. Instead, God had been impressing the phrase returning citizens on my heart and the idea of how we as a church could enter this space. As Brian Stevenson said, quote, "We cannot create justice without getting close to places where injustices prevail. We have to get proximate to people who are suffering," end quote. It was time for us to get close to the issues of reentry and those whose lives are affected by it. What stood out for me as we planned and prepared for Locked in Solidarity 2020 was this. While there were a few non-religious or secular organizations serving returning citizens, sadly, there were relatively few churches or religious organizations working in the realm of reentry into society. Most churches are involved in jail ministries, which are very important. Reentry, however, is also an important mission for the church. At Riverside Church, we believe in recognizing and reaffirming the dignity and humanity of our men and women who fill our jails and prisons. It is a command from God and a call to the church. Hebrews 13:3 tells us that we are to remember those who are in prison as though we are in prison with them, and those who are mistreated as if we ourselves were also suffering. It is one of the duties of the church to give time and attention to our incarcerated brothers and sisters. Yet for so long, the church has been sitting idle, willing to hand this duty over to the government, but it is the church's responsibility. The Beacon is conveniently located near a state of Indiana Department of Corrections reentry facility, as well as a county work release program. So it was with great intention that we invited the warden and the directors of both facilities to our 2020 LIS event to tell us about the work that they do at their institutions. Informing our attendees and helping us all see these people as our neighbors was our first goal. Our desire went beyond creating an awareness of our neighbors, however. We wanted to call our community to action. After hearing and seeing the presentations, many signed up to volunteer at these institutions, and we as a church began to foster relationships. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, both institutions enacted extensive restrictions that have prevented us from being as fully engaged as I would have liked. Yet we were still very interested in interacting with this population somehow. God laid on my heart the idea that we needed to host a job fair specifically for returning citizens. So as a church and community resource center, we did just that. On December 10th of 2020, the Beacon hosted a second chance job fair. We had 13 registered employers, 45 job seekers, and several community partners in attendance. It was a great day, and our church volunteers really stepped up. And the day was filled with the joy and satisfaction that we were serving our neighbors and connecting them with second chance friendly employers who were willing to extend employment opportunities. So far, 8 of those job seekers gained employment. This is just the beginning for us. We are prayerfully considering what programming, mentoring, and other services we can provide as a church, but not in a paternalistic way. It is vitally important that we engage these men and women as fellow citizens and neighbors, that we learn from them, that we ask questions, and that we seek to understand the needs that they have and the barriers that they face. We must approach this with grace, patience, and a listening ear. And with God's grace, I pray that as a church, we are in this for the long haul, that God would give us strength to push through the awkwardness, the hardships, and maybe even being taken advantage of at times. A wise man once told me, "Jeff, consider the cost and base your decisions on what God has called you to do. And if He's called you, He will provide all you need for His will to be done." So my challenge to the global church is that it is time for believers to step up and welcome home and into our church body our returning citizens. You may have noticed that throughout this talk, I have not used the words ex-cons or felons to describe these men and women, but rather returning citizens. Changing our language is a small and simple step we can take, one that can help us think and act in new and redemptive ways. God bless.